Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Command Zone podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Weeks, and today I've got a special guest joining me. It's Gaurav Gulati.
Hi, everyone. It's me, Gaurav. How's it going? Wait, they can't answer. I forgot. So, I guess reply in the comments how it's going.
How it's going? The camera goes, great.
It'd be really creepy if the camera just talked.
Give you a tiny thumbs up.
Yeah.
Today we are talking about the newly released Marvel Commanders. There's 5 new Secret Lairs. We've been hearing about Marvel cards coming out for ages now, and finally we get to see some cards. We don't normally talk about Secret Lairs because there's a ton of them, and we talk about a lot of cards already, but this already has the people talking, so we're like, you know what? If you pick up any of these cards, we want to let you know how to build them. So today we're going to get into those Marvel characters and all of the cards that go alongside them, both mechanically and flavorfully. But if you want to pick up any of the cards we talk about here today, go to cardkingdom.com/command, and you're supporting the show while you do so. Card Kingdom has a huge selection of singles and sealed product, so when you're building a deck, it's a great place to start. Put all of the cards you're looking for into their they've got like a bulk buying thing, and you can get a ton of cards all in one place. That means that you can pick up like less elsewhere, but you only have one envelope coming in the mail with the bulk of your deck. Very exciting. Plus, they ship things professionally and quickly, so you know that the cards that you order on the website are the ones that are going to show up on your doorstep in the right condition, in the right printing, especially for stuff like Marvel. The flavor of the printing is so precise. You want to make sure you get exactly the card that you're looking for. And we trust Card Kingdom because they know cards. So go to cardkingdom.com/command, and the cards you pick up will also be supporting the show. And then once those cards are in your hand, go to ultrapro.com/command to get all of the accessories that you need to keep your deck safe and organized and your collection looking awesome. You can get playmats and deck boxes, binders, everything that any sort of TCG player needs to make sure that your cards stay safe and organized. I'm really particular about how my collection's organized. I spent a lot of time sorting cards. I bought this card sorter from ULTRAPRO.
Ooh, cool.
And it's awesome. It makes me feel like a game store, but we get a lot of product coming through our house, so it's nice to get it all in order and merge it with the collection. So when I'm building frantically, I know where all of my cards are.
That's cool.
Again, ULTRAPRO has a bunch of really, really sweet products. We love the Mana 8 line. It's bright white. It's perfect for conventions because you can get it doodled on and signed. And then once you have that card, you can put it in ULTRAPRO's premier playmat display case. Goes right on the wall. And then you've got like a little memento from a MagicCon. It's pretty fun. Again, support the show over at ultrapro.com/command. Finally, we've got a Kickstarter running right now for a brand new double deck box. Check out this guy. It's got our logo, bright orange, emblazoned on the front, embroidered. In the inside, we've got many of our logos, and they're like this little spot UV shiny boy. There we go. Magnets are strong, which is good, so your decks don't fall all over the place.
It's very luxury branded on the inside. It feels really good, like a Coach bag. It feels really
super
cool.
high quality deck box. You can fit 2 commander decks in here. You can also fit the tokens that go along with them. There's a little box on the inside. You can put some tokens, some dice, even a Dan deck. I don't know. Whatever you need to carry when you go to your next game night, you can carry it all in one place in one compact deck box.
And
again,
those commander decks can be double sleeved.
That's true.
It's very important for me. Very important for me. I love double sleeved. It
actually fits in the deck box.
Yes.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That Kickstarter is live right now. You can go pick that up, and that money goes directly to the show and gets you some cool swag that says that you're a fan and that you are into game nights, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So thank you for supporting the show. Go pick up this deck box that's available in the link in the show notes. All right, one more thing, order of business. We shout out one lucky patron every single podcast episode, and this one is dedicated to Gravy Train.
My favorite Marvel superhero, Gravy Train.
Yuck. His powers are horrible.
Yeah. There's been like 100+ years of Marvel at this point, probably. So it's possible there was a villain or a hero named
That sounds
Gravy
like a
Train.
villain to me.
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah.
Sticky and
I'm
salty.
so full. No. Once again, Gravy Train.
Today we're talking about Marvel Commanders, and I brought in Gaurav because Gaurav knows all about superheroes in various comic books.
Yes, I'm a huge nerd.
Yeah, I was looking for somebody in the office that I was just like, I need somebody who's excited about these cards in a way that is like very specific and personal. And I was like, I wonder who I can find. And I walked into Gaurav's office and you were wearing a Venom t-shirt.
Yeah.
We have a winner.
Yeah. Marvel comics were a big thing for me when I was a kid. And actually around the same time I started playing Magic, because obviously when you go to a comic book store, they have Magic cards too at the same time. So, I would go and buy, on Wednesdays is when they release the new issues, I would do that and maybe buy a couple of booster packs. So they kind of go hand in hand. Now they're releasing Marvel Magic cards. It's like, this is the craziest thing that's ever happened. Yeah. And all my dreams are coming true.
Now they go truly hand in hand.
Yeah.
They are stuck together.
Yeah.
So today we're going to go through each of the Marvel commanders that got their own secret lair, and we'll talk about them individually, let you know what cards fit mechanically, and also we've talked about some things that are good flavor includes as well, usually with mechanics considered, because we know you don't want to put cards in your deck that just don't work.
Yeah.
So let's get into it, starting with the first one in alphabetical order. It's Black Panther, Wakandan King.
Wakandan King, yeah.
What if I was just like, Wakandan King?
It's okay, we talked about it.
I've seen the movies. I just don't read the comic books as much.
That's fair.
Black Panther is a human noble hero for green and a white. He's a legendary creature. It's a 2/2 with first strike. And he has two abilities. One is Survey the Realm. Whenever Black Panther or another creature you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target land you control. The next one is Mine Vibranium. 3: move all +1/+1 counters from target land you control onto target creature. If one or more +1/+1 counters are moved this way, you gain that much life and draw a card.
Pretty good. Commander that says draw a card. Already you know it's going to be good.
Already sweet. I mean, this is an awesome commander. There's very interesting flavor here. The Wakandans are very much about their space and the connecting to the natural.
Yeah, exactly. Vibranium being the sort of made up element that Marvel made up in comics to say, like, this is stronger than everything. Captain America's shield is made of vibranium. So, like, that gives you a sense of, if you've seen the movies, you know all about how vibranium is a very important element. And in the comics, even more so, early on, there's like wars had for this element. And so it's very cool that they adapted that into this commander to say, like, mining vibranium in their kingdom of Wakanda is like very much such a part of their kingdom. It's so cool.
Yeah, you move it from the land onto the people.
Yeah,
it makes the people stronger.
Gives them powerful armor and abilities, and it's awesome. Yeah, very cool.
Very cool design here. It's green and white, so it's got some like creature fall stuff going on. I think the first thing that I think of when I look at this commander is like, okay, we're going to need a lot of like creatures to enter the battlefield. Yeah. So my first thought is tokens.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Secret Lair does come with a token that's like unique art just for this commander to tell you, like, yeah, this is the kind of strategy you kind of want to go with.
For sure.
So it's very cool.
So the Secret Lair comes with a very sweet Secure the Wastes. That's going to be in this deck for sure. But you probably want some other kinds of effects here. We're talking about lands. We're talking about tokens. So those big X spells actually fit this deck very well. March of Multitudes is the one I always think of. It's an instant that's green, white, white, and X. And it also has Convoke. And you make that many soldiers. Yeah, they're 1/1 white soldiers.
Yeah, with lifelink, which actually, you know, in a game of Commander is actually pretty decent.
Yeah, some incidental lifelink here is really powerful. And I love the Convoke side of this because you can, and the instant side of this, because you can do this on the end step. Yep. You can come out of nowhere, put a ton of tokens on a land, and then you're like, we're moving now.
Yeah, yeah.
So I like that one a lot. And for that same reason, I like this next one.
Yeah, Grand Crescendo. Crescendo?
Crescendo.
I missed the sh. Grand Crescendo. This also is an instant that makes X 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens, so the citizens of Wakanda in this case. And the creatures you control get indestructible, which is awesome. Anytime you make a go wide strategy, people are going to be digging for board wipes. And so you definitely want some protection. This is protection on top of making more dudes, which is sweet. This is awesome.
What I really like about this deck is it's tokens, which makes you commit a lot to the board, but it allows you to store some of your value on your lands, which aren't going to die in a board wipe.
Yep.
So if you have your commander in play and you put a ton of creatures onto the battlefield, then you can store a ton of lands, you can store a ton of counters on a land until you have a creature that's going to benefit from all those counters and can attack right away.
Yeah,
so you don't get super blown out by a board wipe because a lot of these resources are kind of flimsy to board wipes.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Other cards we want to talk about here are, again, more token makers, like Awaken the Woods is a really good one. This one makes X green forest dryad land creature tokens. And that's awesome because, one, it's obviously going to trigger your commander, but also they're lands, so you can actually put those counters on those lands directly, so you'll actually have powered up tokens, that's really good for this deck.
Yeah, I like this include a lot because it just means that you don't have to pay that mana to move the tokens around. You still the counters around. You still can, but those counters are going directly onto a creature, so you can start swinging next turn. Remember, they are lands, but they still have summoning sickness, so they need a turn to tap.
Yes.
Anytime you're doing lands and counters, I think we automatically think of Avenger of Zendikar. If you need a ton of bodies in one box, that's exactly the kind of thing that I would include in this deck as well. Another one that I think is interesting and sort of uses a combination of the things that Black Panther's really good at is Angelic Sellsword. This is a 5-mana Angel Mercenary. It's a 4/4 with flying and vigilance. And whenever it or another non-token creature enters the battlefield, you make a 1/1 red mercenary, which are the ones that tap to pump something. But then it says, whenever it attacks, if its power is 6 or greater, draw a card. So it's flying, it's vigilant, and if you can put some counters on this thing, it's going to draw you additional cards. Plus, it makes tokens to make its own counters.
It does everything this deck wants to do. It's awesome. It's really good.
This next one is insane flavor-wise, but so good in the deck.
I get a chuckle every time I have to read this card's name. I love it. It's Jacked Rabbit.
Yeah, it's great.
It's really good. This is X 1 and a white for a 1/2 creature Rabbit Warrior. It has Ravenous, which means it enters with X +1/+1 counters, and if X was 5 or more, you get to draw a card on ETB, which is awesome already. And then when it attacks, you get to make a number of 1/1 white rabbit creature tokens equal to Jack Rabbit's power. And Jack Rabbit's power will obviously increase as you're adding counters from lands and when you're moving them over. So this will just feed itself. It is just an amazing card in the deck. Yeah, this is almost an auto-include in this deck, I would say. It's super
so,
easy.
I mean, it's just tokens and counters. It does exactly what we're trying to do here. The move with something like Jacked Rabbit is, this is normally dangerous because if you put a bunch of mana into it, it's so telegraphed, right? Where you're like, I cast this thing for 5. When I attack, I'm going to get a ton of rabbits. But in the deck with Black Panther, you can cast this thing where X is 1 or 2. And then finally, when it's able to attack, you can attack with it, get that trigger on the stack, and then move counters to the Jacked Rabbit with your commander's ability, and it'll resolve, giving you like a ton of rabbits at one time. So it protects it a little bit. It makes it a little less flimsy to spot removal or a board wipe. And you're going to get all those tokens, which gives you more counters, which means a bigger Jacked Rabbit next turn.
Absolutely, yeah.
Along the same lines and slightly better flavor-wise is Threefold Thunder Hulk. It just makes gnomes equal to the number of counters on it, similar to Jacked Rabbit. I think of Wakanda as like sort of a robot-y, like technology type.
Absolutely.
Of place. So you can fit in the gnomes and the construct. He's a gnome. He's a really big gnome.
Yeah, just a really big gnome in a tin can. So, I mean, if you saw the movies, if you've seen how that final battle goes in Endgame or Infinity War, like, of course, they're going to have people in suits doing awesome things. So I don't remember any gnomes there, but,
they're big. It's gnomes by another name.
They could have short Wakandan somewhere. It's fine.
The next element of Black Panther is, of course, +1/+1 counters. There's a million things that could support this in green and white. We looked for a couple that were as synergistic as possible, but basically, if it says +1/+1 counters on it, it can probably fit into this deck just fine. Luckily, there's a new one that fits perfectly flavor-wise.
It's very timing-wise, this is great. This is called a Scythe Cat Cub. This is from Foundation's Jumpstart, J25. It is a 2/2 for 1 and a green creature cat. It has trample and landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. If this is the second time this ability is resolved this turn, double the number of +1/+1 counters on that creature instead. So that's quite powerful in a deck where you are moving counters and doing this sort of weird accounting where you're trying to get all the counters onto maybe Jacked Rabbit or Black Panther to do these big swings. And then this one says, hey, if you got a fetch land or just haven't played your land yet, you can probably double those. And that's quite good. That's quite powerful.
This card seems busted. It's also a great place to put all those counters, right? Because it has trample.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So there's a lot that Scythe Cat Cub has going for it, in addition to just being Bristly Bill with a free double effect on it. It's wild. Another one I wanted to include was Botanical Brawler. It was sort of flavorful with the lands.
Sure,
thing.
It's an elemental. Any sort of elemental cat nature like thing really fits well into the Wakandan theme.
This is a green-white elemental warrior for a 0/0 with trample. It enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters, and then it says whenever 1 or more +1 counters are put onto another permanent you control.
Ooh.
If it's the first time a +1/+1 counter has been put on that permanent this turn, put a +1 counter on Botanical Brawler. So now anytime a land enters, you put a counter on, or a creature enters, you put a counter on a land. Usually it's the other way.
Yeah.
And you can also put a counter on your Botanical Brawler. It has trample, so it wears them very well. And if you spread out your counters, putting 1 counter on like each land, then you keep getting more and more counters on your Botanical Brawler.
Yeah.
Plus he's 2 mana. He's so
awesome.
cheap.
Yeah, that's really good. Next, we have, Champion of Lamphold. Okay, so this is an oldie but a goodie. This is a 1/1, a lowly 1/1 for 3 mana. How could that,
it always stays a 1/1.
How could that be good? Let's find out. So it is a 1/1 for 1 and 2 green, a creature, human, warrior. Creatures with power less than Champion of Lamphold's power can't block creatures you control, any creature you control. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Champion of Lamphold. So a lot of go-wide decks include this card if they're playing green, just because eventually your board will be completely unblockable. And in this deck where you are also moving counters from lands onto Champion of Lamphold or other creatures, this will get ridiculously powerful, ridiculously quickly. So it's very good in this deck.
It's also really good with all the token stuff. I mean, Champion of Lamphold's just busted in this kind of deck.
Yeah.
Going to be very difficult not to include it. Anytime you include counter stuff, you always include a little bit of proliferate, and we've got some good pieces that work in this deck as well. Evolution Sage, I think, is a natural fit. This says landfall proliferate. This is a lands deck where you're looking for specific kinds of lands, and it's a token deck, so it's great if you can put 1 counter on a lot of things. The proliferate gives you a lot more counters really fast. Metastic, we got it. Metastatic Evangel. We've done it.
We've done it. We know how magic cards are pronounced.
1 and a white for a Phyrexian human cleric. This is whenever a non-token creature enters, proliferate.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's a token deck.
Sure, but you do play a lot of creatures.
We keep naming non-token creatures.
Yeah, they're very good. And if honestly, if this was any creature, it'd be way too powerful.
Yeah.
It'd be way too powerful for 2 mana. It'd be ridiculously powerful. So this is kept under check by that limitation, but it is still quite a good card in this deck.
Yeah. We got a ton of like cool cat synergies in green and white encounters.
I love these. Yes.
I feel like we have to include them.
Yes.
Both Sovereign Okanek Ahau and Kutsil Malamut Exemplar are 2 green-white cat counter commanders.
Yes.
And they're great in this deck.
They're perfect for this deck. They're so good. Yeah, so for the first one, which is Sovereign, how do you just pronounce this?
Okanek Ahau?
You pronounce this one so easily, but the last one you were like, Avenger.
And Metastatic.
Anyways, this one is 2, a green and a white for a 3/4 legendary creature, Cat Noble, which does share a creature type with Black Panther, which is awesome. Has Ward 2. Whenever it attacks for each creature you control with power greater than that creature's base power, put a number of +1/+1 counters on that creature equal to the difference. So any deck that is playing +1/+1 counter synergy wants this because it's just going to make them even bigger, even faster. This is awesome. Yeah, this is great.
It's also so good with stuff like the Brawler that we mentioned that has base 0/0, comes in with 2 counters, so he just starts putting more and more counters on stuff like immediately.
Yes.
This seems really great in the deck. Kutsil as well protects your turn. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. And then whenever 1 or more creature you control with power greater than its base power, deal combat damage to a player, draw a card.
Yeah.
Card draw, cat, counters. It's all happening.
It's all happening.
It's all happening. Speaking of cats and counters, you should put Philidor Retreat in this deck. You know it. We talk about it all the time.
It's a good card.
It's really good.
It's a good card. Just need some land. You're fine. Just put it in. It's good.
I like the cat synergy in here. I wonder if people are going to do Black Panther cats.
Yeah, like there's no cat people in Wakanda other than the people that are, the Black Panther.
The specific Black Panther.
Yeah. So, but it just feels kind of flavorful to have them in there.
Yeah. It matches the energy.
Absolutely.
There's a couple more things I want to talk about because your commander gives you a really specific instance where you can move counters. I like all of the stuff that triggers when a counter gets put on them.
Absolutely.
So Evolution Witness feels extremely good in this deck. This is the one that whenever a counter or one or more +1/+1 counters are put on it, you get to get a permanent card from your graveyard.
That's correct, yeah.
Yes. Plus the vibes are perfect. It looks very Wakandan.
Yeah.
But this just helps you rebuild really fast. It's a great place to put counters, move. If you can move them off and back onto it, it has an adaptability. I guess your commander only lets you take it from the land and put it on there, but you got a lot of lands with a lot of counters on.
Yeah. And as we'll see in a moment here, there's other ways to get counters on creatures that aren't just the commander's ability of mining Vibranium.
For sure. Yeah. There's a lot of ways to just sort of protect the counters. When you're playing a +1/+1 counter deck, you put so many resources into accruing these counters. If you lose them in a board wipe, it's sort of disastrous.
Yes.
So like this deck does really want the Ozolith, which steals all the counters when stuff with counters on them goes to the graveyard. So this includes your lands? No. It's just creatures.
It's just creatures. But still quite good because you are going to be moving those counters on creatures such as Jack Rabbit, and obviously your commander can be powerful with counters as well, but anytime they are removed, which they will be magnets for that sort of removal, this will save just the progress you've made, which is awesome. This is really good. And then you can move that onto another creature.
Resourceful Defense counts your lands.
Perfectly named. Oh, yes. Also perfectly named. Yes.
Whenever a permanent you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, you can put those counters on targeted permanent you control. So you can save them on a different land if it gets, like Ghost Quartered or something like that. Or you can put it on a different creature. I don't know. Or you can put it on Resourceful Defense. Go nuts.
I mean, this also protects it if your Ozolith gets blown up, right?
That's true.
Which is awesome. It's also going to be magnet for removal. It's a very good card. And namely, the Ozolith actually doesn't come in this Secret Lair, but it does come in the Wolverine Secret Lair.
So you can do a Marvel one with it.
You can do the Marvel version in there, which is pretty sweet. We love that.
I feel like even if you want to build one of these, you're so tempted to buy all of the Secret Lairs because you're like, I want the Soul Ring from the Iron Man one, and I want the...
Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
Absolutely.
They know what they're doing. There's lots of great +1/+1 counter cards that can go into this deck. We have a couple of sweet options mentioned already. Like Dusk Legion Duelist is whenever it gets counters, you draw a card. All of that stuff is going to be really good. But like we mentioned before, moving those counters can get kind of expensive. So having ways to work around his ability, only putting counters on lands, is going to benefit you in saving some mana in the long run.
Yes.
So something like Ashaya, Soul of the Wild, that turns all of your creatures into lands, shortcuts this when you're trying to buff your creatures really fast and not store those counters when it was somewhere safe.
Yeah, Ashaya is a really, I feel like, underrated card because it also protects you from weird things like Cyclonic Rift.
Yeah.
Which is
love that.
It's crazy. Like no one thinks about that, but your things are lands now. They can't be bounced anymore because it says bounce target non-land permanents, and they are lands. So it's an amazing card that kind of takes people by surprise.
Yeah, love Ashaya in this deck. Dryad Arbor, any kind of, we already mentioned the one that makes Dryad Arbor tokens.
Yep.
Land creatures are really, really sweet in this deck. In addition to making your lands into creatures.
Ooh, yes.
We've talked about ways to make your creatures into lands, but it works the other way too. There's
Absolutely.
a lot of lands that can turn themselves into creatures.
Yes.
And there's one that's particularly good.
Yeah, no, this one feels a bit, I mean, I don't know how Wakandan this is, but it does feel good when you get to swing with a 10/10 flyer. But anyways, Inkmoth Nexus is a very cool land that doesn't scare me at all. It just says to add one colorless to your mana pool. What's this? It has another ability. For 1 mana, Inkmoth Nexus becomes a 1/1 Blinkmoth artifact creature with flying and infect until end of turn. It's still a land. It says that. It's still a land. Cool. So you could just start putting this counters on this, from turn 1, turn 2, and then people just maybe don't notice it. I will notice it because it is an Inkmoth Nexus.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can't hide this one. If you get 9 +1/+1 counters on this, which doesn't seem crazy.
Yeah. With all the
you
proliferating effects and
like a kill button on your battlefield. It's a removal check is what it is.
It definitely is. It definitely is. Yeah. It's very scary, but very good in this deck.
Yeah, all of those really cheap ones. I mean, Blink Moth Nexus probably goes in this deck as well because it's just 1 mana to turn it into a 1/1 flyer. Even without Infect, that's a very scary land to be wearing a lot of counters.
Yeah.
You could also spread those counters out, not put them all in one basket, one Phyrexian basket, and turn all your lands into creatures at once with something like Sylvan Awakening. It says until your next turn, all lands you control become 2/2 elemental creature tokens with reach, indestructible, and haste. They're still lands. So all those counters you've been saving and your opponents are like, why are you moving those onto your creatures?
Yeah.
You cast Sylvan Awakening, suddenly you have an army of 4/4/5/5 indestructible lands.
Yeah.
I love this idea. I mean, Natural Affinity, I really like the spell-based ones. There's like enchantments that do it permanently.
Yeah.
But I don't think this deck should be designed to like make your creatures into lands and then to bring them back from the graveyard because there's just sort of too many things going on. But single instances of like Natural Affinity says all lands become 2/2s that are still lands.
Yeah.
But yours aren't 2/2s. They're bigger.
It also feels so much more thematic just because like Wakanda is one of those in the fiction country that was like never colonized and is like fighting for the land that they possess. And it's so powerful to have these lands fight for you, right? It's very cool. Yeah, I enjoy that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a couple of creature lands. There's tons of these. I imagine the deck probably runs all of them in the colors.
Yeah.
Lair of the Hydra is a really good one because you can put a bunch of mana into it and make it bigger. Treetop Village I like in particular because it turns into a 3/3 ape with trample. So wears counters particularly well.
That's pretty good, yeah.
There's one that turns into a llama. I forget the name of
There's
it
a
right
llama
now.
land?
There's a llama land.
Okay.
I think it's from Ixalan.
Okay. Llama Land.
Ixalama.
Ixalama Land. Ixalama Land. That's my favorite theme park.
Because of that, because you have so many like sweet lands, I think you're probably running like a crop rotation and some stuff to like.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're in a pinch and you just need to get if it is an Ink Moth Nexus, sure. Yeah, you can get it with a crop rotation. That feels pretty decent.
We rotated the crops out and rotated in this horrible black goo.
Is this good? Are my crops okay?
So that's how you build Black Panther mechanically. We had some good flavor includes there, but we wanted to make sure that we mentioned some stuff that is particularly on brand for Black Panther as well. Stuff that like feels right in his world.
Yeah, so one card I really like in this deck is Court of Garenbrig. This is an enchantment for 1 and 2 green. When Court of Garenbrig enters the battlefield, you become the monarch, which is pretty flavorful. You're the king of Wakanda. That's pretty awesome. And at the beginning of your upkeep, distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among 2 target creatures. Then if you're the monarch, double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control.
That seems good.
That's good and mechanically works really good for your deck. Like you want to be king and, Black Panther in the comics is always fighting for the crown against Killmonger, who is his half-brother. It feels like a thing where you can sort of role play at the table like, I am the king of Wakanda and I must have my crown.
And just scribble out Garenbrig and write in Wakanda.
There you go.
Do a little sticker
you
over
could do that.
it.
You could do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems perfect in this deck. It gives you a ton of like real strong flavor options. Another one that you mentioned that I like is just the Great Henge.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is a very powerful card, and you're like, okay, the Great Henge. But like mechanically, it works really well in the deck. But also flavorfully, all of their power is drawn from this like central core.
Yeah, exactly. Like the tree that gives the fruit that makes him into Black Panther is this like magical sort of tree that you can see. It's mentioned in the movies a lot because that's the central plot point of the first one. But in this deck, it also mechanically and thematically makes great sense because it is easier to cast based on the power of your creatures and then also adds more power to creatures as you play them. And draws you cards, which is amazing. Really good.
Pretty sweet.
Great Henge usually goes in most green decks that play big creatures, but this one feels really good too.
With a card like the Great Henge that's like $70, having so many reasons.
Is that how much it is now?
It's like ridiculous. I don't know. 70 is an estimation. Yeah. But it feels emotionally like $70. I need a good reason for it to stay in a deck. Like I have one copy, and it's in a deck where it does like fine things. But if you're building a deck like this where you're like, it's perfect for all of these reasons, then it moves.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
There's a lot of really sweet things. Something that Gaurav and I were talking about for a while. We were like, how do we show like the shield wall?
Yeah.
Because that's like so much of them is this sort of energy field and their sort of secret, that they say secret from the world for so long. And I think privileged position is a really great option to show that.
Yeah, very much so. Not only is it a powerful card in protecting your other permanents, but the art of this kind of feels like, oh yeah, I could see this sort of thing existing in Wakanda. So it's a very flavorful card. We had talked about doing Teferi's protection, which feels like every white deck has this card if you're cool enough to spend the money to get it. But this one feels way more flavorful of Wakanda being this force of power in the world and having the privileged position of having vibranium and having the Black Panther. So
and
it feels very
secret
cool.
And being like untouchable outside the world, basically.
Exactly.
Like one of the first movie was all about how they started entering the world and leaving this privileged position behind. So,
right.
I don't know. I think it's a good one.
It's cool.
Yeah, you thought of that one. It was good.
Yeah, it's cool.
We've got a couple more. Do you want to mention?
Yeah, so we had Panharmonicon, which is a good card in just about any ETB deck. This one, I feel like the art style feels like it could just also exist in Wakanda. It feels like it's just a very nice art piece of a crown that's just like sort of sitting in a central square of the town. Unbreakable Formation is another great card mechanically, but also it looks like the Wakandan soldiers getting ready for battle, which is amazing. This one's a cheeky one. Fleetfoot Panther. It's a Black Panther. It's cool. But
he
it
himself.
also protects one of your things and bounces it away to say like, no, this is my king. I will protect him.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can also bounce the Fleetfoot Panther over and over and over again and keep getting counters.
Oh, I don't
know if that's a good plan, but it is a plan.
If you just have late game, just have 3 minutes sitting around, like I'll just keep doing this to keep getting this effect to proc. That's interesting. I did not think about that.
See, that's the Black Panther will save the other Black Panther to fly.
That's pretty cool.
It's a neat card. I think it'd be worth including in this deck. Of course, like, you should go out of your way to find cool art with people of color to put into this deck.
Yes.
Like, Wakanda is about Black pride and it's about Black excellence. And there's been a ton of incredible cards that are painted explicitly to make sure that it includes people that are like Black people to go in Wakanda.
Absolutely.
So I think like there's an opportunity to make this deck absolutely stunning and feel really, really flavorful and powerful. And I can't wait to see the builds that come out of it.
Yeah, notably the Black is Magic Secret Lair that came out a few years ago has a Shalai in there that is wonderful and actually thematically really fits into this deck as well. So I think if you do that, and I love thematic decks more than I love mechanical decks most of the time, it feels really good to have that sort of theme of Black power being in this deck because that's such a big part of Black Panther when it was created. So it's cool to see that theme portrayed as the years go on.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with this deck. I think you can do some really cool stuff with it. It's cool to see a counter deck that gets the lands involved.
Yeah.
Up next, in alphabetical order, is the Cap himself, Captain America First Avenger.
Captain America First Avenger is, wait, these mana symbols seem like they're in a different order than what's normally allowed.
A specific order.
How did they do this? So Captain America First Avenger is a 4/4 human soldier hero. They have a lot of types in these. That is red, white, and blue. Red, white, and blue, 3. Just that's it. And it is a 4/4 for 3, which also I will say is power creep at its best. It has 2 abilities. The first ability or first piece of text on there is throw. For 3 mana, you can unattach an equipment from Captain America. He deals damage equal to that equipment's mana value divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 targets. And he has a second ability called Catch. At the beginning of combat on your turn, attach up to 1 target equipment you control to Captain America. So just reading this card, this deck sort of builds itself in a sort of Voltron-esque equipment theme, which, thinking about it now, what are we going to call Voltron decks when they make a Voltron Secret Lair?
I know.
Because it's like...
This is my Voltron deck. No, it's not.
Yeah, no, it's
Captain
not.
America.
Yeah.
So this one's obviously designed after Cap's shield. He does a lot of throwing and catching. The 1, 2, or 3 permanents is really funny.
Yeah.
Because he throws it and it does like a ping pong thing.
Boing, boing. Yeah, it's very cool.
So yeah, we went into an equipment direction for this specifically. Like many Voltron decks, Captain America is going to be a bit of a lightning rod for removal.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because he's very powerful and it's going to be at the core of your deck. So the first thing that we talked about is stuff that goes that protects the captain. And cheap stuff in particular, like Mother of Runes, Giver of Runes, even like Skrelv Defector Might. It's not great flavor.
So it's like his mom, his sister, and his weird bug dog.
His pet. They're just great things to play on turn 1. You can play Cap on turn 3. You can play an equipment on 2, and you can really get the ball rolling in a way that feels very efficient in this kind of deck.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, pack some protection for the captain because he is pretty serious. Benevolent Bodyguard is good if you're a Doctor Who fan. Get K9 Mark 1 in here. It gives him ward 1, and then you can make him unblockable.
Pretty good. Yeah.
That's a good dog.
And that's an actual dog, not a bug dog. So
yeah, it's a robot dog.
Well, I guess that's true. I thought it was a real dog. But yeah, Swiftfoot Boots is once you start getting to turn 2, you want to start playing equipment that he can, because of his free ability to equip stuff during the start of combat. Very powerful ability. You want to put down equipment on turn 2 if possible, because then he can start doing his shield throw the turn after he's played.
Yeah, and in the case of Swiftfoot Boots, he starts attacking right away as well. A lot of the ones that we looked at are, again, protection. Voltron is all about keeping your commander on the battlefield. Winged Boots is great. It's a funny image. Cap and Win like a little Hermes boots.
I mean, he has them on his little
he
helmet.
Just puts them on his feet.
Beep, boop. Yeah, exactly.
Gives him ward 4 and flying.
There you go.
It's a great way to start off the game. If you want to make him unblockable and give him ward, Brotherhood Regalia is a little bit of crossing of UB as well, but gives him both protection and unblockable.
Just imagine it's like World War II uniform or something.
That's true.
Instead of Brotherhood Regalia, because that's sort of like a Brotherhood.
Yeah, we need altars of all of these
I know, right?
to really feel right at home.
I think that's going to be a big thing in this until they actually do print these. I mean, some of these cards that we're talking about being flavorful might actually get printed down the line. So, but I'm excited to see the altars that people make of currently existing Magic cards, which maybe they've already been made for other cards that they've done, but I'm very excited to see those.
Thran Power Suit also feels fairly flavorful and good in this deck. It's an equipment for 2 mana that gives the equipped creature +1/+1 for each aura and equipment attached to it and gives it ward 2. Again, some protection, a little bit of buff. That's sort of what we want the first 3 turns to look like. Is some kind of protection, some kind of equipment, whether it's protection or buff, and then your captain on turn 3, so you can get him equipped right away and feel safe with his shield.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of defensive equipment to talk about at the beginning here. And then after that, you can start putting the big guns on him.
Yeah.
Right? That's when the big equipment start to come down. After Cap's already on the battlefield, you can start playing some big, impactful equipment that leaves your mana open, like a sort of feast and famine.
Yep.
You can equip it, you play it after him, you can equip it right away, attack, untap all your lands, then you've got mana up to throw any of the weapons equipped to him.
Yeah, the equipment being double duty of, giving the abilities of what that equipment is and also being a weapon that you can literally throw around for damage is such a powerful ability. Other equipment include the Reaver Cleaver, which just is menacing. But it is a 3-drop. It is 2 and a red for a legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, has trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or a planeswalker, create that many treasure tokens. Later on in this, we're going to talk about equipments that are more expensive, but the more expensive those equipments are, the more damage Cap can do when he throws them. So you do want a way to generate more mana to be able to do that. And it's a little harder to do that in the colors that we are, which is Jeskai, red, white, and blue.
All right. These help you always have a shield activation up, which is nice.
Yeah.
There's obviously equipment that you can use for all sorts of different things. There's straw-based equipment like the reality chip, which is great to be able to auto-equip that. Or Key to the Vault is one I like a lot. It's 1 in a blue for an equipment. It says whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, look at that many cards from the top of your library. You may exile a non-land card from among them, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. This is really helpful for getting these big equipment onto the battlefield. You're trying to do a lot of damage with your commander. So this is a great one to be able to cast cheaply, equip without paying that expensive equip cost, which is 2 in a blue.
Yeah.
And start getting some big equipment down on the battlefield so you can fling them at your opponents.
Yeah, the reality chip also flavor-wise could just be the reality stone because that's just already existing in Marvel. That's pretty sweet. So
look at that.
Love to see that, Alter. That's going to be sweet.
Some of the big equipment that you can equip Cap to is, I mean, there's one that's just sort of the biggest of all.
Yeah, this is Excalibur, Sword of Eden. It costs 12, but it is reduced. So this spell costs X less to cast, where X is a total mana of historic permanents you control. Then it gives equipped creature +10/+10 and vigilance. It has equipped legendary creature 2 or free in Cap's case at combat. So it's going to cost less because you're playing a bunch of equipment, which counts as historic, and obviously Cap is already historic. So oftentimes you can get this down for less than half cost, if that. It's quite good and makes him quite menacing as a 14/14.
And you can throw this 12 mana value sword. Also, just like slow down and picture Captain America just hucking Excalibur like a boomerang, killing 3 creatures and then catching it again. Incredible.
Terrifying.
Incredible. That's closer. It's more on flavor for America. Than
I was going to
Shield.
say, it's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, that's true. Another one here is Meteoric Mace. This is 4 and 2 red for equipped creature gets +4/+0 and has trample, but it also has Cascade. It's equipped 4, but Cascade is the bigger thing here because you can get another equipment or something else that will help you mana-wise, and then the equip is negligible because obviously you will be doing it for free, making him an 8/4, which woof. That's pretty good. And trample is always good for anything that's going to be wanting to attack. Notably, his throw ability does not make him tap, so pretty good.
You can throw him even after he has attacked.
Yeah.
Anytime you can reduce the equip cost, I think Helm of the Host starts to get looked at.
Yep.
Give Cap a funny hat.
Yeah.
And start making more of him.
Yeah.
The flavor is disastrous.
It is, yeah. The clone saga is a Spider-Man thing, but it's starting early here with Captain America because this is going to make copies of Captain America, non-legendary copies of him. So you will get multiple instances of equipping those artifacts that you have, those equipment cards, and then you can throw those every turn if you have the mana. It gets wild. And then also the equip cost of this is negated, which was usually the biggest bottleneck because it costs 5 to equip. It costs nothing to equip if you have Captain America during combat. Quite scary of a card.
I think this is a sweet one.
Yeah.
One of the big ones I want to mention before we move on is Hexplate Wallbreaker. 3 red for an equipment with 4 Mirrodin, so it gets a 2/2 and it auto-equips. The equipped creature gets +2/+2, but it also says whenever equipped creature attacks, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap each attacking creature. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So this gives you an extra attack, which is always good in a Voltron deck. It halves the amount of time that you have to spend attacking people, but this is a 5 mana equipment that is great to throw and gives you another free equip on the next attack.
Yeah, absolutely. It also gives you a 2/2 that just stays there in case you want something to block with or something you can just equip all your other equipment on. Quite good.
There's Sunforger is great when you can do a free equip here. You can pop it off and go find an instant or sorcery in your deck, cast it for free. This is so powerful.
Yeah.
But remember, if you're including Sunforger, you do need a package of cards that make because good. I would say you want a minimum of 10 instant or sorceries that are good in various situations.
You'll have some removal, maybe a counter spell or two, because protection really is really important for Voltron. So that's what this card will go and find, which is awesome.
There's one more that Eric at the office mentioned that I wanted to talk about, and it's Kusari Gamba.
Oh, what is this?
This is a 3 mana equipment that says equipped creature has 2: this creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. But it also says whenever equipped creature deals damage to a blocking creature, Kusari Gamba deals that much damage to each other creature defending player controls.
Whoa.
This doesn't say combat damage. So if you have the Kusari Gamba and another equipment attached to Cap, you can throw the other equipment during your turn or an opponent's turn and just blast their whole board.
Interesting. Well, so it requires a blocking creature, correct?
Yes.
Deals damage. Interesting. Okay, yeah, that's really tricky.
It's a really bizarre equipment.
Yeah.
So if you have like the Meteoric Mace and a Kusari Gamba equipped to Cap,
it
just means that like they cannot block or risk losing their entire board.
That's really risky for anyone versus a Voltron deck because that's how they win is by doing commander damage. So this is quite good. This is cool.
I've never seen a Kusarigama deck after so much looking, and I think this might be the first one that makes it feel like that good.
That's very cool.
Give Kusarigama a try in your deck. We'll see if it works.
Yeah.
The final section we want to talk about here is reducing that activated ability on Cap. We're going to want to throw a lot of equipment. That's one of his most powerful abilities.
Absolutely.
So reducing that means a lot of added power. Training Grounds is a perfect addition in this deck. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. Could you imagine if he has 3 equipments attached and he can just blow out everybody with just 1 mana per activation?
Juggling swords over there.
Yeah, exactly. That's terrifying. Yeah, that's very good. And Training Grounds, a little flavorful. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, that works for him.
I love that.
A little less flavorful is the Enigma Jewel and Omen Hawker, but they both are 1 mana and tap for 2 mana, and you can use that 2 mana to activate activated abilities. Yeah. So it's just like little soul rings that help you throw more equipment.
The Enigma Jewel is another Reality Stone or another Infinity Stone at this point. Yeah,
that's fun.
That's flavorful.
Yeah, which one? Which one is it?
This would have to be Power. I have to assume because of the color of it, but maybe or Power's purple actually. So I don't know.
It's kind of Time. Enigma, like it's like sort of related to Time.
That's true. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, because it does make mana,
that might be a
which
stretch.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the flavorful includes for Captain America. These are the ones that make him feel like Cap right at home.
Yeah. I mean, this first one, it makes him feel a little more like Thor, but it is Mjolnir Stormhammer. This is a legendary artifact equipment for 4. When an ETB is attached to target legendary creature you control. Hey, we're halfway there. Pretty sweet. Cap can pick up the hammer. Whenever a creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls, then put a stun counter on it, and then Mjolnir deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of tapped creatures that opponent controls. This is awesome. I mean, Mjolnir flavor-wise, I'm sure they're going to print one eventually, but until then you have this one from Assassin's Creed. This feels really good. And also tapping creatures down when you're playing a Voltron deck. Yeah, that's going to be pretty nasty. It's going to feel really good to do.
Yeah, that's just a firm bonk on the head with a shield.
Yeah.
He's like, I am stunned.
Yes.
The other includes that we have in the flavor section are sort of approximations of Marvel characters with what we have for now.
Yeah, I was trying to think of cards that, Captain America in this deck, because of the way he's mechanically themed, is very much an equipment deck, but he's also the leader of the Avengers, and he wanted him to assemble other Avengers, so I tried to pick creatures that sort of exuded those abilities. So this next one is sort of like a Hawkeye standby. So this is Tali Joaquin, Perfect Shot.
Ty Joaquin.
Ty Joaquin. I saw an L there because of this glare. It is a red and a white for a 2/3 legendary creature, human mercenary. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to a creature equal to that creature's toughness, draw a card.
Perfect.
That's awesome. So when you're dividing the damage with Cap, you're often going to just do enough to kill a single creature anyways. So this immediately is beneficial because it draws you a card. But it does more. X and tap. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a permanent or player this turn, it deals that much damage plus X instead.
Oh, it's so good.
So whenever you're throwing like a 2-mana equipment, it does divided, 2 damage, 3 damage. You can make it X equals 10. Now you're doing 10 per hit of that artifact. That's nuts.
That's really powerful.
That's
brutal. Just throwing a 3-mana equipment and it'd be like, all right, I'll deal 1 here, 1 here, 1 here.
Yeah.
And Ty Joaquin is like, actually, it's going to be 4 each.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, I kill 3 creatures with that.
Pretty good.
Yeah, that spends 6 mana to do that, but it's really, really powerful.
Yeah.
And you haven't spent any cards from your hand to do that, just the 2 that are already on the board. I love that.
It's quite powerful. Next up is Kellen the Feyblood. I think of this as Bucky, his little sidekick. I mean, that's what Kellen's always felt like to me, but he's quite good in this deck. It's 2 and a red for a legendary creature, human fairy. It's a 2/2. Now, Bucky wasn't a fairy, but let's just white out that part.
He's... I do want him to be a fairy now.
This is an adventure card. The adventure side reads Birthright Boon, 1 and a white for a sorcery adventure. Search your library for an aura or equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Perfect.
Nice.
Exactly what Cap wants is to get those equipment cards into your hand. Its creature text is double strike. Other creatures you control get +1/+0 for each aura and equipment attached to Kellen the Feyblooded. So basically think of this as Cap giving the hand-me-downs to Bucky and saying like, here you go, kid.
You can have the free equip ones.
You can have exactly. You can have a Sword of Feast and Famine, and it powers me up too.
And it's got double strike.
Yeah. So
I found this card really, really powerful in equipment decks, and I've included it in more things that aren't even specifically equipment decks because the tutor's really great, and the Anthem effect is obviously very powerful.
It's very versatile. In this case, kind of flavorful. This next one is kind of a stretch, but I think it's cool. Cauldron Complete is a 7-mana legendary creature or legendary artifact equipment, but it's a living weapon, which technically means that when it ETBs, it will attach itself to a germ, which will give it just the abilities of this artifact equipment. So it's indestructible. A creature gets +5/+5, and has first strike, trample, indestructible, haste, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a creature, exile that creature.
It's so powerful.
It's very good. It is equipped 7, but in this case,
free.
Yeah, free. Imagine this is like Hulkbuster armor that Captain America gets to wear until he throws it at somebody like a cruise missile. So it will make him, a 9/9, disgusting, with all these things that any Voltron commander would love to have. First strike, trample, indestructible, haste. It's quite good. And, starts off with a body to begin with, so it's always useful.
The germ is Ant-Man.
The germ's Ant-Man. The germ's Ant-Man. Speaking of Ant-Man, this next one is just a favorite card of mine from cons, because I'm a boomer. Mantis Rider is Jeskai colors blue, red, white for a 3/3 flying, vigilance, haste. Now, haste and flying and vigilance are all really also great in any equipment deck because you equip something to this, it's going to probably get into at least one player, which is awesome to see, but it's also just an Ant-Man standby. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could even put the Iron Man card into this deck and have the literal Iron Man card go. That works like pretty well on it.
It does, yeah.
We'll talk about him a little bit more in a second, but it's when he attacks, you sacrifice an artifact, you can find another one that's 1 mana value higher.
Yeah.
So there's some decent synergy between Cap and Iron Man.
Yeah, very cool.
Of course, he keeps sacrificing Captain's equipment. Stop it!
Stop it!
He's like, I'm upgrading it.
I can afford more. It's okay.
It's okay.
I'm a bajillionaire.
So that is Captain America. He's got a bunch of friends that come along with him. He's got lots of different, more aggressive weapons this time around.
Yeah.
But, he figures out how to make a weapon out of anything. We've got 3 more commanders that we're going to try to talk about this episode. We're going to talk about them. We're not going to try. We're going to talk about the rest. But first, we have to hear a few words from our sponsors.
Listen up, fleshbags! You're in the domain of the Lord of Pain! The Lord of Pain less for high-quality audio, that is, with RAYCON wireless earbuds! Look, it can be torture finding things in life that just work how they're supposed to. So when my coffee maker's on the fritz or my Iron Maiden gets stuck shut, I throw them in the pit. But you know what never causes a fuss like that? RAYCON's best-selling everyday earbuds! They just work, and RAYCON keeps making them better and easier than ever. Their new multi-point connectivity lets me pair with 2 devices at once, so I can switch seamlessly from listening to the screams from the rack on my phone to the crunching of Black Vice on my laptop. RAYCON start at just half the price of the other guys, so they're already an incredible deal, even before you factor in their Black Friday offer of up to 30% off site-wide. And with a 32-hour battery life, they can last even longer than my victims!
It's time to save big for Black Friday. Go to buyraycon.com/command today to get up to 30% off site-wide. That's right, you'll get up to 30% off everything on Raycon's website when you go to buyraycon.com/command.
This episode is sponsored by Etsy.
All right, and then I'm going to play Into the Floodmaw, and Rachel, I will gift you a tapped fish.
Thanks.
What?
I mean, it's fun.
It's a pretty impersonal gift, Josh.
What about Rachel says tapped fish to you?
I mean, it's the gift on the card.
Look, if you want to give personalized gifts to people that they'll actually like, you should try shopping on Etsy. It's easy to find original gifts on Etsy that'll make whoever you're shopping for this holiday season feel extra special.
So you'll get that big, excited reaction you're hoping for the moment they open their present.
The shops on Etsy have all sorts of fun, customizable items, so you can put together a truly thoughtful gift.
I got my mom a mug with little sculpted versions of her dogs on it. She loves it.
Aww. And I got my wife a beautiful vase with sculpted versions of Jordan's mom's dogs on it. She was confused.
We even used Etsy to find those Game Nights holiday blankets that everybody loved.
Oh yeah, I can do a ton of my holiday shopping on Etsy this year. But for now, bounce your ghostly prison, swing for lethal.
You got me.
For original gifts that say, I get you, Etsy has it.
Yes! Probably. Anyway.
Probably. What's going on?
I just goldfished a huge turn on ARCHIDEKT. Check it out, they've got the best playtester in the business. Playing and tapping your cards is as simple as clicking them. Everything goes right where you want it, but you can drag things by hand and group them together in different ways too. Then there's easy shortcut keys for things like making copies, sending cards between zones, and starting the next turn.
Nice, so this is a Traxa. All that proliferating's gotta take a while.
It doesn't actually. Just right click and hit proliferate all counters.
Oh wow, yeah, you probably do win.
I think so.
ARCHIDEKT is the best place to browse, brew, and playtest commander decks. Just go to archidekt.com/commandzone to get started.
That's ARCHIDEKT.com/commandzone.
Welcome back, everybody. We are talking about Marvel Commanders. At last, they're here. Up next, we are talking about Iron Man, Titan of Innovation. So he is a legendary artifact creature, human hero. It's 3, a blue, and a red for a 4/4 flying and haste. And it says, Genius Industrialist. Whenever Iron Man attacks, create a treasure token. Then you may sacrifice a non-creature artifact. If you do, search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed artifact's mana value. Put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So he's like a little birthing pod. Whenever he attacks, he upgrades he makes this artifact a little bit better.
Yeah, it's very cool. In the lore, it's very much like Iron Man has always been the techie of Marvel, and over the years he's got even more crazy. He has basically at a certain point he gets Extremis, which is a sort of nano machine thing, so he doesn't even need like physical armor, which is shown in the movies as well. It just becomes like he can just get armor at any time,
just at will. Yeah,
it's
crazy.
amazing. So this is sort of exuding that of like he tinkers and gets cool artifacts into play.
I love that he does it with a little treasure too.
Yeah, because he doesn't need the money.
He doesn't need it. He throws that out to make something cooler. So this is a birthing pod commander, which means that you're going to need searchable artifacts at a variety of mana values. You're going to want 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, 5-drop, and usually some sort of preference for what you get depending on the situation. I think a special focus on 1-drops is nice because you always have that treasure to sacrifice to go find a 1-drop. But there is a decent curve here where he's a 5-drop. So if you cast like a talisman on turn 2, then you can cast a 4-drop artifact on turn 3, and then you can go for a 5-drop when you cast Iron Man on turn 4.
Yes.
So looking for a variety is always nice, but you always have the access to 1-drops, and it would be nice to be able to get a 5-drop the first turn he attacks.
Yeah.
So focusing on 4-drops and 5-drops is helpful as well.
Yeah, you really want to plan your mulligans in the game you're playing to kind of set this engine up to be very efficient, and then when he comes out, you do the thing and get something out. Because he does cost 5, which compared to the rest of the commanders here, like it's a bit more expensive. But
you really want to make sure the first time he attacks, you're not just sacrificing a treasure to go get a 1-drop, especially
Absolutely.
Something like an Arkham's Astrolabe.
Right.
It's not worth casting your commander.
Yeah.
Maybe getting a Soul Ring. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
So having some decent 1-drops is always nice. That means in the late game, you always have something to sacrifice, even if there's been a Vandal Blast or something like that. But you want stuff with ETBs or dies triggers primarily, especially in those early mana values.
Yeah.
So like I would include like an Ichor Wellspring, all of those type of effects.
The Wellsprings are really good for this, yeah.
Just like 2 mana artifacts that come in, do a thing, and when they die, they do a thing. Yeah. That's a great thing to sacrifice. I also think a Noble's Purse is pretty good flavorfully.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a 2 mana artifact when it enters tapped and with 3 coin counters on it. Then you can tap it, remove a coin counter from Noble's Purse, and you make a treasure token.
That's awesome.
Once the purse is empty, you can sacrifice the purse and go find a 3-drop.
That's cute.
Finding some more powerful 2-drops is going to be sort of the goal.
Yeah.
I think Stronic Resonator is going to be a big part of this.
Yeah,
deck.
it also seems like something Iron Man would just invent.
Right.
This is a 2-mana artifact that reads 2 and tap. Copy target triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. So this will let Iron Man trigger twice when he does attack, which is awesome. You get to get 2 things instead of 1 for the price of 1 sack.
Yeah, you
We
go
love
up the
that.
scale a little bit faster.
Exactly.
there. Do you sacrifice? I bet you sacrifice twice. Whenever then you sacrifice a non-gun. If you do, whenever Iron Man attacks. So you're going to make 2 treasure tokens, then you have 2 opportunities to sack artifacts, and then you get 2 things.
I see, yeah.
So I think you can move up the chain twice, or you can sacrifice 2 different things. Having your deck list alongside you is going to be very helpful when you're playing a deck like this.
When you're playing a tutor in the command zone, you really want to know your deck. And if you're learning, like Rachel said, like have it printed out or have it easily available as a link on your phone so you can not spend a lot of times, tutoring through your deck.
Your commander does make treasure tokens, so a great 3-drop for you to go find is Academy Manufactor. It is worth noting that you cannot sacrifice the Academy Manufactor to Iron Man because he only sacrifices non-creature artifacts. But I believe he can find creature artifacts.
Yeah, robots are his friend. He will not destroy them.
Yes. So be careful with what you sacrifice to your commander. I think Academy Manufactor is great in this deck. That means when you attack, you get 3 things instead of just the treasure. But also something like a Brass's Tunnel Grinder is a really great birthing pod option. So when it enters, you discard any number of cards and then draw that many cards +1. So you can wheel away some of your hand and draw even more. It's just a great toolbox option.
Yeah, that's quite powerful when you need to refill your hand and you just have a 2-drop on the board. Like, this is really good. It's really good to know those lines, especially when you have a tutor in the command zone like we're talking about. Like, know when you want to get a certain card when the board is in a certain state. It's quite powerful ability.
You can eventually transform Brass's Tunnel Grinder in this deck, but I think it's pretty slow. You're probably just going to throw it into the chipper and get something cooler after that.
Yeah.
Okay. For the 4-drops, I wanted to talk about Phyrexian Metamorph.
Gross.
Yeah, it's a 4-drop.
Boy, Phyrexians are powerful.
I know, right? We keep bringing them up.
They go in a lot of decks.
Do you think Tony Stark is pro Phyrexians? Is he a little curious?
I mean, he's been...
They're not all technology.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but the thing about the Phyrexians are like they are so obsessed with perfection, and that is Tony Stark as well. So I don't know. Like he's done a lot of bad stuff in the comics. So
in the pursuit of perfection,
exactly,
we're gonna get a completed Tony Stark.
Oh no.
Along the same lines as Tyrannic Resonator, I like Lithoform Engine in this deck. Feels on flavor for him.
Very much so.
It's a 4-mana legendary artifact that can either copy activated or triggered abilities. Perfect. So you can copy his triggered ability. 3, you can copy target instant or sorcery spell that you control. Probably less likely there, but 4 is tap copy target permanent spell you control.
That's always very good.
So if you have a spell on the stack, you can activate this to copy the spell as well. Very flexible, very powerful, feels very Tony.
Yes, very much so. Duplicating things en masse as an industrialist is very good.
He makes all the toys for the Avengers. Another really powerful 4-drop that I don't think you'll be sacrificing anytime soon.
Yeah, it's the Roaming Throne. Everyone knows this card now. I feel like every commander deck at some point can say like, I could probably put the Roaming Throne in this to make my deck better. You're probably right. Roaming Throne is a 4/4/4/4. Wow. 4/4/4/4. 4 power, 4 toughness for 4 mana. Artifact creature Golem. It has Ward 2 for some reason. As an ETBs, choose a creature type. Roaming Throne becomes the chosen type in addition to its other types. If a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. So once again, you'll get 2 instances of Tony's ability. It is also a very cool robot that feels like Tony would invent, quite powerful, and I think would actually make a decent include in this deck as well.
Encroaching Mycosynth is another one I wanted to talk about. It says 3 and a blue for an artifact. It says non-land permanents you control are artifacts in addition to their other types. The same is true for permanent spells you control and non-land permanent cards you own that aren't on the battlefield.
What could that mean?
That means that all of the permanents in your deck are now artifacts that you can find with your commander. That means that, like, if you're searching for a 5-drop, you can find a creature. You can find anything that's right in this moment.
That's quite powerful.
So this makes you very, very flexible. And now your lines are super complicated.
Yes, really know your deck if you're playing this card. Yeah.
A very powerful 5-drop is Ugin's Nexus.
Yes.
5-mana legendary artifact. If a player would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. If Ugin's Nexus would be put into the graveyard from the battlefield, instead exile it and take an extra turn after this.
Yeah, this is also very flavorful in that it allows basically time travel, which is the plot of Infinity War anyways. So this is quite good in this deck. Taking an extra turn is always very powerful, but this makes it so easy to do.
Yeah, and it just gets you right up to 6, which is the most power. Yeah, it's Ugin's Nexus is going to be an include in these decks for sure. It's a good part of any toolbox. Finally, there's a lot of cool stuff that you could put at the top end of this. Anytime you get like to 6 mana or higher, it kind of becomes flavor to taste. There's a lot of really powerful options that you could put here. Meteor Golem is a really strong ETB. You can't sacrifice Meteor Golem though because he's a creature. Something like a Chroma's Memorial makes all of your creatures into even more of a threat. So I like Coveted Jewel in this deck.
Sure.
It sort of feels on brand for Tony. When it enters, you draw 3 cards and it taps to add 3 mana. In this deck, I think it's great for you because you can take it back very easily. You have a commander with flying. So if somebody steals it from you the turn after you play it, you can get it back. And then you can sacrifice it right away for a 7-drop.
Yeah, that's quite...
So anytime you can get Coveted Jewel onto and off of the battlefield, it is a very powerful
That's a good
card.
MacGuffin. Yeah, that's good.
Finally, this is a tutor in the command zone, so you can go the combo route if you'd like.
Yes.
I looked up a lot of those same lines that were in like an Oswald Fiddlebender list. This
sure.
isn't as powerful as Oswald because you can't untap him and do it multiple times in a turn unless you're playing, I guess, extra turns and extra combats.
Yeah. He's also not as cheap as Oswald, which
That
makes it
too.
a little harder. So basically, if you want to combo off, like make sure before you play Tony, you have everything in place to make this happen.
So there's the classics of Basalt Monolith, the Rings of Brighthearth. There's a lot of ways to combos with artifacts, especially with a tutor in the command zone. There's also like Mirror Welder and Staff of Domination with some sort of big mana rock like Soul Ring. Go nuts. I
Go
believe in
nuts.
you. This is a bit of a delicate deck.
Yes.
It is, your commander is very soft, but artifacts are good with recursion. So
Yes.
making sure that you're leaning into that side of things as well is going to be very powerful.
Yeah, very similar to a Duretti deck that I have in that a lot of your stuff will still function, but it'll be very clunky if you don't have your commander in play to sort of cycle that stuff out of the graveyard, or in this case, cycle it out of your library. So there's cards here that get recursion going so you can do something else if your commander's not in play or gets removed. Cards like Scrap Trawler. Scrap Trawler is a 3-mana 3/2 construct. When it or another artifact you control is put in the graveyard from the battlefield, which Tony will allow, return to your hand target artifact card in your graveyard with lesser mana value. So you get something back that is less than the thing you sacrificed.
Yeah,
which allows you to do it again.
To keep that chain sort of rolling. Goblin Welder keeps artifacts going in and out of your graveyard, which is always powerful, especially with these ETBs that we're talking about. One that I like is Slowbad Goblin Tinkerer, which says sacrifice an artifact, target artifact gains indestructible until end of turn. Tony's an artifact.
Yep.
Keep him safe. You're going to have a lot of sort of like scrappy type of artifacts floating around. You've got treasures, you've got like Arkham Astrolabe, those kind of things that are just sitting on the battlefield. You can sacrifice them, keep Tony safe, and your deck is going to feel a lot more resilient. Finally, I wanted to talk about Saheeli the Sun's Brilliance. I think she's would be a fun lab assistant for Tony, but also it's blue and a red, create a token that's a copy of another target creature or artifact you control, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. It gains haste, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. You can copy an artifact and then sacrifice the copy. And then you keep it and you can keep staying at the same level on the birthing pod chain, or just keep an artifact in play. While still getting that value out of it.
Because the copy of the artifact contains the same mana value as the copy, which is awesome. This is really good. Yeah. I like the flavor of it being a sort of assistant. Tawnos, Urza's Apprentice could be the intern. Another good card that goes well in this deck. Yeah, I love thinking about Tony starting a sort of company that just has a bunch of people that he teleported in from Dominaria. That's pretty sweet.
All right. We've talked about a lot of ways that this deck can really dirtle. Artifacts can make a very strong engine, but if you don't have a payoff,
you don't want to just
take you a second.
You don't want to just turn your wheels. You want to actually finish the game.
So I think an important piece of this that feels very on flavor is Simulacrum Synthesizer. This is 2 and a blue for an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, scry 2. And then whenever an artifact with mana value 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you make a Karnstruct. It gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control.
Yeah.
This feels like a Iron Man struct.
100%. Yeah. I would. Yeah. These are basically, Tony's other armors that he puts in remote control mode that you can just have to fight for him, which I would love to see some tokens with that art. That's pretty sweet. I love that.
I mean, I'm sure we're getting that, right?
That's awesome.
It seems seems so on the nose. So that card is awesome and is going to be a great way to just keep churning out beaters as your engine goes.
Yeah.
In the meantime, like a Kappa Cannoneer is a big unblockable threat that can deal some damage, as is your commander in the air.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about the flavor cards for Tony. There's a ton of good options here.
Yeah.
Which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with Artificer class. This one is an enchantment class, and this has a couple abilities that basically get leveled up as you pay mana. The first ability is the first artifact spell you cast each turn costs 1 less to cast. Easy. You're going to cast 1 billion artifact spells. Might as well make them cheaper. When you level it up, when it becomes level 2, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an artifact card, put it into your hand. So it just puts another artifact in your hand. Awesome. And then for 6, when you level up to level 3, at the beginning of your end step, create a token that's a copy of target artifact you control. So this is the Industrial Revolution happening completely full bore. I mean, flavor-wise, this is basically Tony's story told in stages of as he gets more powerful. Yeah,
hard to build this deck without it, I think.
Yeah.
I also mentioned Gauntlet of Power.
This is so good.
Which, obviously the Infinity Gauntlet is a different gauntlet, but he's got very powerful gauntlets.
He does, yeah. Yeah, notably so.
Is it a 5-mana artifact? When it enters, you choose a color. Creatures of the chosen color get +1/+1. And then whenever a basic land is tapped for mana of the chosen color, its controller adds 1 additional mana. So it's a mana doubler for half of your lands, probably blue, depending on how you've built it. The major downside to Gauntlet of Power, of course, is it adds additional mana for anybody who also has that basic land.
Yeah.
But Tony's a giving man.
Yeah, you could politic this a little bit if you're playing against blue or red players. Be like, I'll give you something if you give me something. Yeah, it's quite good. And this next one, I love that you found this.
It's a little sacrilegious.
A little bit, but it's if you see the art for Delete, which is an X red spell, sorcery. Delete deals X damage to each non-artifact creature and each player, which, this is actually decent in the deck because Tony himself is an artifact. This looks like an old school Iron Man armor doing a laser blast.
It really does. It's blue and red. It's got the blue core.
Yeah.
All the Doctor Who people are like, no, it's not.
I know, but like, you got to see this art. I'm sure it's up on screen right now.
Yeah.
If you're driving your car, pull over, look it up. Like, it's crazy. This belongs in the deck. It's awesome.
You will be deleted.
Yeah.
That's Iron Man's famous catchphrase.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's heard him say that. But yeah, those are some flavorful Iron Man cards, and I'm curious to see what other people do with the flavor that you can put in Iron Man.
Yeah. The one I was thinking of that I think would be cool is building him as an energy commander.
Yeah.
Because it feels very on flavor for him, and there's a lot of sweet artifacts that are a part of that. We just got a ton of new stuff as well.
We did.
So there's been a lot of energy talk lately. You can check out all of those online. But I love the idea of him like tutoring out different things that generates more energy.
Yeah.
Because that's always his. His journey is the quest for more energy.
More power.
Up next is sort of the gal of the hour. She's the one that everybody's talking about. It's Storm, Force of Nature.
Yes.
1, a green, blue, and a red, so 4 mana altogether for a 3/4 mutant hero with flying and vigilance. Whenever Storm deals combat damage to a player, the next instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn has Storm.
I don't know why when I thought about them doing Marvel cards, I didn't just think Storm would have Storm cards.
Yeah.
Is that too obvious? Like, I don't know why I didn't think of it, but yeah, of course, this makes sense.
It's perfect for her. I think the
so
flavor
good.
is great. I think the color identity is perfect. This is a very interesting thing. So it gives the next spell you cast the triggered ability Storm. Storm is a cast trigger. So when you cast it, it makes a bunch of copies for all the other spells that have been cast this turn, either by you or by your opponents.
Yeah.
So this is a Storm deck in Teamer. And I think a lot of people are looking at this and they're like, well, this is busted.
Yeah. It does feel like that at first glance, but I feel like the sort of setback of, hey, before you attack, you have to cast a bunch of spells to make your second main phase pop off. And it's very telegraphed. Like, you will know exactly what's happening when this card is played and starts doing the thing.
Yeah, I mean, it like hits the battlefield, needs a full rotation. You need to storm off, connect, and then have the mana to like have a real payoff in the second main phase.
Right.
It's also, Storm sort of famously uses rituals to cast a bunch of spells very quickly. But if you have to cast all your spells in the first main phase and you need mana left over to cast a spell in the second main phase, your mana pool will be empty of all the rituals you cast in the first main phase.
Yeah.
So you need a lot of mana to make this work, and it's not just temporary mana that Storm decks normally use.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more awkward than it looks, and you're definitely going to need a lot of protection because she is very scary looking.
Yes, very much so.
First thing that any Storm deck needs is cheap spells,
Cantrips. Cantrips and ways to connect in combat. While she does have flying and vigilance, which is great to leave her back as a blocker, not that you'll probably ever block with her, but getting in for combat damage makes the deck do its thing. So you do want cards like Slip Through Space and Shadow Rift, which not only get you in for combat damage, but they also let you draw a card, which lets you sort of fuel this storm thing you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. There's a ton of different cantrips that you can put in this deck. Obviously, you can do like Ponders and Ops and Considers, just the classic suite of cantrips that give you a little bit of selection as well. I liked the combat-focused ones because it felt on flavor for her.
Yeah.
And it's going to match up a little bit with some cards that we're going to talk about later. The second group of cheap spells that I would include is the 2-mana land ramp spells, especially the ones that get a land untapped. So 3 visits, Nature's Lore. Start building up your mana as fast as possible. So when you can attack with Storm, you can both cast a bunch of spells in the first main phase and have the mana to cast something in the second main phase.
Yeah, absolutely. Mana will be your bottleneck in this deck. Having a 4-mana commander on next turn, when you actually want to do the thing, you'll have 5 mana. And so you want, hopefully, maybe you can cast 2 cantrips before your second main phase. And I mean, honestly, you're probably going to need to save up a protection spell maybe because like we said, it's very telegraphed. People are going to see what you're doing and they're probably going to be like, well, before you deal damage, I'll kill Storm. Especially
if you're setting up for a really big turn.
Yeah.
One that I like a lot in the early game and in the late game is Growth Spiral.
Yeah.
So this is green and a blue. You draw a card, you can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. This is a great one to cast early when you're trying to cast a couple of spells to chain together to cast a big payoff spell. It's also a decent payoff spell when you need a cheaper one because you draw a ton of cards from it and you can get a lot of lands out of your play to set up for out of your hand to set up for an even bigger turn after that.
Yeah.
So I don't hate including like this and Explore and that kind of stuff that just cantrip and get more mana onto the battlefield.
Yeah.
The next section of cards that we're going to talk about is stuff that doubles her triggers in some sort of way.
Yeah, Storm cards are, historically easy to break. Whenever you can give any card Storm, instant or sorcery, you can do quite nutty things.
And if you can give a card Storm twice, even better.
It gets weird.
So like Psychotic Fury is an instant for 1 and a red that gives target multicolored creature double strike until end of turn and you draw a card.
Yeah, so Storm's ability triggers on combat damage. If you deal it twice in a turn, the next card gets Storm. Weird. Storm.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Twinferno does a similar thing, except for it has another mode that says when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell, copy that spell. Obviously, that's what this deck wants to do. It gives you 2 great things, and Twinferno feels on flavor for Storm, even if it's a fire tornado. The other way that you can make more Storm triggers is to have more Storms.
More Storms!
And then you give them all double strike.
Yeah.
Irenicus's Vile Duplication is absurd in this deck.
Yeah. This will create a token of copy that's a copy of target creature you control, except the token has flying and isn't legendary. That creature is legendary.
And this is a sorcery.
So you could make 2 Storms, maybe more. Who knows?
A storm of storms.
And once those start connecting, all of your spells are going to have storm. So it gets out of hand pretty quickly. You're
gonna have 2 different storm counts: the number of storms you have and the number of spells you've cast this turn.
This is way off the storm scale.
There's another one that does it similarly. It's Quantum Misalignment. This is a 5-mana sorcery that does approximately the same thing, and it has Rebound. Another great thing to Storm. The one that is completely foul in this deck, and I love putting into decks, is Vesuvian Duplimancy. 3 and a blue for an enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell that targets only a single artifact or creature you control, create a token that's a copy of that artifact or creature, except it's not legendary.
Cool. Yeah, so whenever you make a clone, you make a clone? You clone a clone? Clone
you want to clone with your clone? Yeah. I'm going to make this unblockable and make another one.
Yeah, no big deal.
It's fine.
Yeah. So all those 1 mana spells that also, cantrip, slip through space and stuff that we talked about, they're pretty good in the late game if you're making clones of Storm. Every time you cast one of those, it's quite good. Yeah.
Oh gosh. One that a person in the office mentioned that's a cute non-legendary clone is Spark Devil.
Spark Devil. Yeah,
She's
it's just
sparks.
my flavor. It's just a little flavor there. I love that. Yeah.
This card deck can become a mess very, very quickly. It's a little bit difficult to pull off. Obviously, you need your scary commander in play. You need to be able to actually copy it and have that all resolved. But if you can do it, it's so cool.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see, because people do say that this is the most broken out of the ones that we're talking about today. Yeah. I'm very curious to see how it actually plays because, it does have 3 colors of mana, which usually means it can put a lot of crazy stuff in there. But it does feel like it's so telegraphed that people will be like, well, this plays the same every time because I have to save a protection so much.
Right.
So protecting this commander, much like a Voltron commander, it's not a Voltron one, but it does require to exist for it to do the thing.
All right. We've talked a lot about giving spell Storm. What spells are we giving Storm to?
I mean, if I were a Stormy man, and I am right now.
A Stormer.
If I was a Stormer, I would pick maybe extra combats.
Ew.
Extra turns.
Come
on, it'll be fun. A little time travel, a little extra combat is cool.
There's a lot that are really good with her. Overpowering attack is perfect because it is free running for 2 and a red. It's if you hit with your commander, you can cast it for 3. That's what we're trying to do anyway. And that gives you extra combats. World at War is perfect because it has a rebound. So you can cast it and storm off with it. And then on your next turn, you can cast it again. And it adds to your storm count, I believe, because rebound is a second cast trigger. Yes.
Ooh, that's good.
All of these work because she has vigilance.
Yes.
So there's sort of a weird thing with extra combats is when they are cast, they untap usually upon resolution. And then that gives them the ability to attack again. But because they all happen at the same time, when you storm them all together, your untaps happen all at the same time, and then you get all the extra combats.
Right.
But your commander has vigilance.
Right.
So this does work how you want it to.
Yeah, I will say if you're playing with extra turn spells, extra combats, like this is something you want to put in the Rule Zero conversation.
Yeah.
Because Storm is very powerful, and this, I think, will be one of the best ways to play a Storm deck. So just be clear about that stuff because some people aren't as forgiving about it as we would be.
Yeah, if you're going to take 6 extra turns, I want to know about it beforehand.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
So those are great payoffs. Those are very powerful, but there's lots of like really powerful things that you can storm with. Eagle Vision is another free running spell that you can cast for 1 in a blue if you've hit with your commander this turn.
Yep.
And so you pay 1 in a blue and you draw 3 cards.
That's pretty good.
That seems like an incredible thing to storm with, especially in one of those early turns where you only copy it once or twice.
Yeah, 6 cards, 9 cards, 12 cards, who knows?
Seems pretty good to me.
We have Mana Geyser here, which is for 5 mana. You can add a red for each tapped land your opponents control. So this is hard to figure out how it's going to play out, but once you're storming from it, you could add, maybe if it's 3 mana, could be 6 mana. Could be 9 mana, could be 12 mana.
Yeah.
And usually, I feel like on average, people at this turn would have, 4, 5.
Yeah, I would assume with Mana Geyser that you're making like a safe 12.
Yeah.
And if you make 2 copies of this, you get 24 red mana in your second main phase.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that doesn't win the game. But you do have a lot of big spells in this deck that you can chain together. You're going to have the spells payoffs in the list. So you should have some kind of big burn spell if you're including a Mana Geyser or something like a Turnabout, which is going to untap all of your lands. So if you cast Turnabout and you untap your lands and you copy it 3 times, then you float a whole bunch of mana.
Sure.
So it's possible you want to build a deck where your payoffs are your mana production, and then you have like a big X spell that burns the table out, like a Comet Storm.
Sure, yeah.
So that kind of thing is what I would think about. A neat one that I found was Path of the Pyromancer. I've always liked this card, and this is a wacky place for it. It's 4 and a red for a sorcery. Discard all the cards in your hand, add red for each card discarded this way, then draw that many cards plus 1.
Huh.
So if you make 2 copies of this, like a reasonable 2, You discard your hand. Let's say it has 4 cards. You make 4 red mana. You draw 5. Then you discard 5. You're up to 9 red mana. You draw 5. Then you discard 5. You're up to 14 red mana. You draw 6.
Yeah.
So you've discarded a lot of cards at this point, but you've made a lot of mana and have a bigger hand than when you started.
That's interesting.
Which feels pretty busted.
Yeah.
Of course, a frantic search will do a similar thing for a cheaper price.
Yeah.
You could storm bribery and steal a bunch of stuff from people's decks. That
mean.
seems fun.
Real mean.
You can storm burn spells like Prisoner's
Dilemma. That's actually quite good. I love that as a win condition because it also has flashbacks, so you could do it again and copy that again. That's nasty. I love that.
You can do some really wild stuff if you cast it enough times. You could even storm a lightning bolt, and you could probably kill somebody.
Very humble,
with that.
but yeah, once you copy it a billion times.
And on flavor.
Yeah, very much so.
Speaking of which, what cards would you include in here to make it feel as stormy as possible?
I would include cards like maybe a galvanic relay. Maybe a gust of wind.
I love gust of wind.
Gust of wind is quite good. It's a cantrip that draws you a card, but also bounces things that your opponents control. So it's actually quite good in this deck, regardless of the flavor. It's just good.
You can cast it for 2 mana and bounce like 3 non-land permanents and draw 3 cards.
Yeah.
And it's a gust of wind.
Pretty good. Spellskite is one of my favorites because, like we said, Storm is going to be a lightning rod for removal, and this is just basically a lightning rod for that removal to say like, hey, hit this instead of Storm. Awesome. We love that.
Yeah.
Quite good.
Get a lightning rod for your lightning rod.
yeah, exactly. So those are some of the flavorful cards we have for Storm, and I'm sure people will come up with a lot more flavorful things as people start actually building these decks. I'm very excited to see these at Magic Cons and such and see what people are playing with.
Have a little pod of all of them together.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
That's the coolest.
Yeah.
Finally, we've got Wolverine, best there is.
Yeah.
Last but not
definitely
least.
Definitely not. This is a legendary creature, mutant berserker hero. I thought it would have been beast, but berserker is actually quite much better. I love that. 1 and a red and a green for a 2/2 that reads unrivaled lethality. Double all damage Wolverine would deal.
Sick.
All damage.
Because he's got 2 knives.
6 knives.
Yeah.
2 hands.
2 hands.
6 knives, 2 hands.
Yeah.
That's his other name. That was his previous name. 6 knives, 2 hands. It also reads, at the beginning of each end step, if Wolverine dealt damage to another creature this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on him. And then he also has 1 and a green, regenerate Wolverine.
Yeah.
I think everyone called that he would have regenerate as an ability. Like it's an obvious thing. This card's quite good in that you want to build a deck that just has basically a ton of fight cards, which is so flavorful for Wolverine. I love that. He's always fighting. He's always lashing out. Yeah,
this is a real brawler deck. He's got kind of low toughness, so you got to be careful with when you deploy those fight spells.
Sure.
But you can include a lot of bite spells that have him deal the damage directly to the creatures. Stump Stomp is perfect. This has a land on the back and is a bite spell on the front. One of my favorites is Contest of Claws.
Yeah, that's awesome.
On flavor.
We love that.
Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to another target creature. If excess damage was dealt this way, discover X, where X is that excess damage. So when you deal the double damage, you count the difference, and then you get to cascade for that much.
Pretty sweet.
Perfect.
Yeah. We have other cards like Wind Swift Slice. Basically, anytime you have a fight card in your collection, you could probably put it in this deck.
You can probably put it in.
Yeah.
I would say you want it like 15. Is that crazy? 12? 15's a lot.
I mean, I was comparing this to like the Blanca deck that me and you have played.
Yeah.
It's very similar in that you want things that target your commander to do the thing. So, yeah, I think 15, maybe 20, depending on what your balance of other cards is. But they are removal spells in this case. So, think about that. How many times you remove a creature in a commander game? Because this one's going to do it all the time.
All the time, yeah. That's all your interaction.
Hunter's Bow is another interesting one because it's an equipment, 1 and a green for Hunter's Bow. When an ETBs, attach it to target creature you control. That creature deals damage equal to its power to up to 1 target creature you don't control.
Nice.
It also gives it reach and ward. That's awesome. Really good for this deck. Uvalval Tracker is a fight card on a creature, on a stick, basically. 1 and a green, tap, target creature you control, fights another target creature. whenever you want, which is awesome.
Yeah, all these fight and bite spells are sort of like what you have in your collection. There are some that are better than others, but if you have them, they're all going to play roughly the same.
Yeah.
Instant speed is nice because you can trigger it on every turn.
Yep.
Because he only gets one counter per turn, but I think it checks on all end
It
steps,
does check
right?
on end
Each end
steps,
steps. So the more you can do at instant speed, the more power he gets even faster.
Yeah.
I think bites are probably better in the deck than fights,
Yeah.
but there's some synergy around fighting that you could build in if you want to go more in the bite direction.
I mean, yeah, he does have that regenerate on him. So
That's true.
So fight spells aren't terrible. You just have to save 2 mana to have that regenerate be available to you. That's the way this deck works is a little similar to Captain America in that it's pseudo Voltron. Like he will get bigger over time because of how much fighting he does.
Right.
But the removal is based on not like Captain America's ability. It's based on the fight spells you play, which is a little limiting on this deck.
If you want to make Wolverine really mad, you can mutate a Porcuparrot onto him.
What? Porcuparrot?
Yeah. You can make 2 in a red and you mutate onto this mutant.
But wait, isn't he a human? No. He's a mutant.
He is not.
Perfect for mutate.
It says tap. This creature deals X damage to any target where X is the number of times this creature has mutated.
Yeah.
So you just turn him into a little pinger and you can start shooting damage and getting counters without spending the fight spells if you don't have them.
That's awesome.
Also, he would hate it so much, which makes me really laugh.
Yeah.
Up next, there's a lot of ways to deal non-combat damage to your opponents' faces, and we've talked about a lot of ways to deal damage to their creatures. Chandra's Ignition is a great win con in this deck. Once his power gets high enough, you can deal double damage to all other creatures, and also everybody's face except yours.
Yeah. That's quite powerful. Soul's Fire is another sort of effect like that, but it's only one target, not everything else, but it does cost significantly less at only 3 mana.
You found this one, and it is so good.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. This is an enchantment called Dizzying Gaze. Enchant creature, play Dizzying Gaze only on a creature you control.
Sure.
For 1 red, this is a repeatable ability. For 1 red, enchanted creature deals 1 damage to target creature with flying. So the way Wolverine reads, he only has to do any damage to a creature. He doesn't have to kill the creature to get that counter. So basically, if this is applied to Wolverine, for 1 red mana each turn, you get to do 1 damage, which will become 2 because of his ability, and it'll do 2 damage to target creature with flying. He'll get a counter at the end step, regardless if that creature dies or not. Now, you do need opponents to have creatures with flying. I guess you could have your own creature with flying. It doesn't say opponent's creature, but that tends to happen a lot in Commander, and it's quite powerful if that does happen. So yeah, it's a pretty neat card.
One that feels very flavorful for him is Uncivil Unrest. 4 in a red for an enchantment that says non-token creatures you control have riot. So they either enter with a counter or with haste. Perfect. And if a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage instead.
Whoa.
Yeah, he's already doubling.
So double?
Uh-huh.
Woo!
Pretty good.
I love that.
Damage doublers are very good with Wolverine because it's an exponential growth chart. I want to caution people against like Torbrand type effects.
Yeah.
Because when you add additional damage and you combine that with a damage doubler, the opponent or the controller of the targeted thing gets to stack them. And they stack them in a way that is not beneficial for you. And so they and their permanents take less damage.
Yeah.
So you really want just doublers. It doesn't matter how they're stacked. It's all good for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Up next, you want to make this boy bigger.
Big boy Wolverine.
Yeah.
Biggest there is.
If I'm playing a red-green deck that is trying to do any amount of damage, I'm putting Helena and Elena partners in the deck.
Yeah.
They put counters equal to their power onto target creature, and they give them haste.
Yeah, that's quite good. I mean, Wolverine does have regenerate, but it will be a lightning rod for removal. Once he starts getting big enough, they'll find a way to get rid of him that isn't destroy. Exile effects will get rid of him pretty easily. And this gives him haste, makes him powerful immediately. He will become a 4/4, and then we'll
deal 8 damage. Yeah.
Pretty good.
The faster you can start scaling that stuff, the better your commander is, especially if he's already gotten removed once.
Right.
Bristly Bill is a great way to get counters on someone fast. The cat that we mentioned already.
Yep.
Any sort of like a hardened scales, I think I would put in this deck because he's getting 1 counter a turn. Doubling that for just 1 mana is really powerful.
Very powerful, yeah.
And then some kind of ability to give him trample so you can
Yes.
close out the game, I think is going to be valuable as well. We've mentioned a few of them already, but Dusk Shell Crawler and the effects like that say each creature you control with a +1 counter on it has trample.
Yep.
Those are all going to be very good in this deck.
And you'll need to protect him. As we said, he will become very mean and very angry and start lashing out at everything. So a Snakeskin Veil would be very good. Protect your creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and target creature you control gains hexproof until end of turn. For a single green, that's great. You're going to need a few of these effects. Again, like I talked about playing Blanca before, it is a lightning rod. In that case, you do want him to get hit because it does the damage to everybody. But in this case, you wanted to protect Wolverine as much as you can from those exile effects.
Yeah. Indestructible on these effects are not as important because of the regenerate ability. So hexproof is premium here, or anything that sort of phases them out. I don't think that's possible in green and red. So alternate forms of protection like hexproof is going to go a long way here. Royal Treatment is kind of fun. Put a little royal roll on him. It gives him +1/+1 in ward and gives him hexproof the turn you cast it.
Yep.
So all of that is going to be very helpful in keeping your dear Wolverine around.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to the flavor cards for Wolverine, our angry, pointy boy.
Yeah, the first one is called Arena, and it's just a land that says 3 and a tap. Tap target creature you control and target creature of an opponent's choice they control. Those creatures fight each other. This is everything Wolverine wants, and he's been in many, many arenas over time. The only downside of this is that you do require to tap him. Now, this could be the turn you play him if he doesn't have haste, right?
Yeah.
It can still be done, which is awesome. It also taps down a creature that the other person controls, so you could use that for some sort of politicking as well. But this is, repeatable fight on a stick, which is exactly what this deck wants.
Yep. And once he's big enough, he'll win any fight on the battlefield.
Exactly. Yeah.
A Rancor is a fun thing to put on him. It's an aura that for a single green that gives him +2/+0 and trample. And when it goes to the graveyard, you put it back in your hand. So it alleviates some of the downside of auras.
Yeah, flavor-wise, Rancor, I had to look it up because I was like, what does this even mean? I've seen this card and I love it. It basically means bitterful, resentfulness.
What?
Long-standing rivalries. Yeah. The flavor text reads, hatred outlives the hateful. And yeah, Wolverine is, a very vengeful man of the woods. So this makes a lot of sense and gives him trample, which you definitely want Wolverine as much as you can. Wild Defiance is an awesome card that actually is really beneficial for all the fight spells. For 2 and a green, you get an enchantment that says, whenever a creature you control becomes a target of an instant or sorcery spell, that creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. That's really nasty because remember when he doubles all damage he deals? So you could do this when he's attacking, when he's defending.
+6.
Any fight spell gives him immediately 3+ power and toughness. That's nasty. Plus,
It's really sweet.
yeah, Wild Defiance. He's always been in Defiance.
That's his thing.
Yeah.
Finally, I'll let you explain the flavor to this one, but we've got to include Gimli's Reckless Might. And I know you're screaming at your camera. 3 and a red for an enchantment. It says creatures you control have haste. And then it says, whenever you attack, if creatures you control have a total power of 8 or greater, target attacking creature you control fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So again, all of the fighting is so good. The haste is really powerful in aggressive decks like this one. I do not think Wolverine's going to be your only creature on the battlefield. So that 8 power, the formidable ability, is not going to be too much of an issue.
Yeah, mechanically, this card is great. And flavor-wise, look, Wolverine is actually, in the comics, he's pretty short. Like, he's a little Canadian dude, and he's kind of short.
He's perfectly square. And he's as wide as he is tall.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman has done a great job revitalizing Wolverine in the past 2 decades he's played him, but he's actually kind of short. I know that doesn't work well for TV or movies, but he's a short little grumpy guy that has claws, and I think that's as close as you're going to get to a dwarf. So,
look, it's Wolverine's Reckless Might, all right?
Yeah, exactly. Just cross that out. There you go. Yeah.
All right, those are the 5 commanders of the brand new Marvel Secret Lairs. We're going to be talking about a lot of Marvel down the line, but this is all we've got for now. Before we go, I want to talk about our favorite commanders of the bunch and the one that we think is the most powerful.
Yeah, mine is actually Wolverine. Wolverine is a character I've loved for a very long time. One thing I wanted to recommend was his origin comic. This is a comic that came out years ago, but it talks about, it shows his actual origin. And I don't mean when he got his claws. This is pre him getting his adamantium skeleton. So it's a very good short, I don't know, 100 pages, not even. But it's a very good story, and some of it was sort of put in the movies, but not quite. The book is much better than that story that was told. Wolverine is an amazing character that has so many intricacies about talking about anger and legacy and revenge. And if you've seen Logan, which was an incredible film, regardless of whether you like comic books or not, you get some sort of general idea of his arc as a character. But this card that they printed is so flavorful and amazing, and I am going to build the deck around it. I also like very much how Gruul has this sort of fight mentality, and he just evokes it perfectly. So I'm very excited to build this one.
Yeah, that's sweet.
How about you, Rachel?
My favorite is Black Panther, Wakandan King. I just keep looking at this deck as like this tower of dice on your lands.
Sure.
And there's so much great flavor in Wakanda, and so I'm really excited about that. And I love the mechanics of being able to instant speed, like move and buff a creature out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Because it's got this cool thing where like we're so used to drawing on lands for mana, but being able to draw on the land for power is very cool and feels very flavorful.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
The most powerful commander, I think we all agree. We've talked a little bit about her downsides, but if we're talking highest ceiling, it's got to be Storm.
Storm feels like she can win out of nowhere, which is very cool as being a flavorful Storm thing.
Right.
Like, that's awesome. But
like, Storm's busted as a character.
Yeah, no, she's one of the most powerful mutants in existence. Like, she's incredibly powerful, which I'm glad they put into the card itself. Like, that's awesome. So it also makes me very excited to see what else they do with Marvel cards coming in the future, right? So
how do you think they did with these?
I think they did a great job. I know some of the cards that, other than these, are the reprints that came with the Secret Lair. Also flavorfully really well done. And this makes me so much more excited to see, the Spider-Man cards that come out next year, because he is, as you can tell, very near and dear to my heart. So I think that's going to be awesome. Home runs for me. I love these.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what they're coming up with. I love when Universes Beyond feel like they're made with love and knowledge of the series and the tone, because it pays the fans off for actually investing in these and feeling rewarded for knowing the inside jokes on these cards.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, Marvel fans, to the listeners. Which of these commanders are you building? Are you building all 4, 5?
Ooh.
What are the sweet cards for the 99 that we missed? We're recording this before the Secret Lair goes live. I really, really hope that you all got access to these cards. We have no idea how they're going to be dropped. So crossing our fingers that they're in the hands of everybody who wants them.
Yes.
Because they're pretty cool. And so hopefully you got the Secret Lairs that you wanted, and we'll be seeing them across the table from us soon. If you want to pick up these cards or any of the ones that we talked about in this episode, go to cardkingdom.com/command. You can pick up single sealed product from this set and every set. If UB isn't your jam, we totally understand. There's a lot of new cards that are in the Magic world. Foundation, and the Jumpstart came out with a ton of beloved characters from Magic's actual IP. There's a new Nate Mizzet who is insanely busted.
Yeah.
You can get all of those cards while supporting the show. For if you're flavorfully minded, you're looking for exactly the right printing, exactly the right condition, and you want it for your deck all at once in one safe package. So again, go to cardkingdom.com/command. You can support the show while you're picking up some sweet cards. And then go to ultrapro.com/command to get some sleeves, binders, deck boxes, everything that you need to keep your collection safe and organized and beautiful. I mean, with Marvel, the flavor is so important. You want the right color deck box, you want the right sleeves, and you want it to be high quality to protect your prized possessions. So go to Ultra Pro. We trust them with our collections, and they have some amazing art and all sorts of different flavors of things. They often get Secret Lair drops.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's the case with Marvel. I know IPs on Universes Beyond is a little wacky.
It's tricky.
But keep an eye on keep an eye on the Ultra Pro website and see what Secret Lairs are getting to their website, because those are some of the coolest playmats that you can get. If you don't want to keep an eye on the website, sign up for their newsletter. And you'll always know when there's a fire sale dropping or a brand new wave of Secret Lair art. Again, ultrapro.com/command. And if you need a new deck box, pick up one from our Kickstarter. It's this guy. It holds 2 decks in one. You can do friends or rivals, Iron Man, Captain America in one box, plus a little bit of room for dice and tokens as well.
Yeah, what I really like about these is if you go to a convention, stacking these in a backpack. Like Jimmy had mentioned this in the video, but like it's so convenient to just have because if
you don't have a bunch of loose boxes.
Exactly, you have singular deck boxes in your backpack, and you're like, oh, is this in my back? Is this big corner in my back? This fits really nicely. Stack them on top. It's awesome.
Nice. That's a good move.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys for listening. We're going to say thank you to our amazing team here at the Command Zone. Eric Lem, Rachel Kender, Jamie Block, Jordan Pridgeon, Jake Boss, Josh Murphy, Manson Lung, Christopher Matista, Karina Cruz, Sebastian Salazar, Evan Limburger, Sam Waldo, Josh Lequai, Jimmy Wong, and Gaurav Gulati for taking the time to talk about Marvel superheroes with me.
Thanks for having me.
These are very fun. If you're into it, I hope you're having a good time building them. And we'll see you soon for some more stuff on Foundations.
Catch you next time.
Thank you for your attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter @JFWong and @JoshLeeQuai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.